If you've used PayPal, Venmo, or a Cash App to get paid, you are about to get hit with a surprise tax form from the IRS. But here's the good news. That rule didn't just get delayed, it got permanently corrected. In this video, I'll explain what changed, how it affects your taxes, and what you can do right now to keep more of your money legally. What exactly was the 1099-K rule that the IRS was about to enforce? If you remember back in COVID, we had this American Rescue Plan. This is in 2021, and this is new in the Biden administration. The little known change at the time was instead of having Venmo only have to file this 1099-K, 1099, of course, is how you get your income reported to you, right? What the rule used to be was $20,000. You had to actually have received $20,000 from Venmo before Venmo would actually send you a 1099. Okay, now what happened was they lowered that threshold drastically in the 2021 new tax law. Well, everybody immediately was up in arms. They lowered it. This is how drastic. They went from $20,000 to $600. Well, people are going, well, wait a minute. I get Venmo from my buddy when I pay for golf, or when I pay for lunch, everybody sends me a Venmo. So you're saying that if I get $600 during the year, let's say I go golfing with my buddy 5 times, and he sends me his share of the greens fees, and it's $600, I'm going to get a 1099 for that. And the IRS is going to say, hey, you're taxable on that. Well, of course you're not taxable on that. That's not income to you. That's a reimbursement that you paid money for somebody else. So it was a ridiculous rule. It was an absolutely ridiculous rule. So what happened was the IRS says, well, we'll postpone it. And then they postpone it again. It could have been any kind of payment you received. It literally could have been a transfer from your grandmother for your birthday, and you'd have gotten a 1099. Well, here's the problem with that. Now, even though it wasn't income, the IRS would have thought it was income. What happens if you get a 1099 and you don't report that on your tax return? What does the IRS do? They send you an immediate notice and they say, you owe this much money. They calculate the tax. They calculate penalties. They calculate interest. So it would have been a nightmare, not just for you as the taxpayer, but for the IRS as well, because how are they going to handle all those calls? Remember, they can barely handle calls anyway. And they're going to get all these calls from taxpayers saying, wait a minute, this is not income to me. This was a gift from my grandmother, or this was my buddy reimbursing me, when we went golfing. It was such a terrible rule. So here's what happened. The IRS, they got so much pushback on it. They hit pause and hit pause again. But guess what? The good news is in Trump's one big beautiful bill, this $600 got repealed permanently. What does that mean for you? You have to meet 2 rules in order to get a 1099 through Venmo, as an example, or Cash App. You have to get more than $20,000, first of all. Second of all, you have to have over 200 transactions. Now, I can see you could have 200 transactions. You might use Venmo every day, right? So the 200 transactions, you may still have that, but not 200 transactions from one place, just from Venmo. And certainly, typically not $20,000. So what do? Well, obviously you're going to use 3 different apps, right? You're going to use Zelle sometimes and Venmo another time, and PayPal another time. That's what's going to happen. You're just going to have to manage this so that you stay under that $20,000. Now, that doesn't mean, by the way, if you actually do earn income, let's say, for example, you sell something on eBay, that is income to you, and it is reportable, and it is taxable. So don't be skirting the law. The new tax law does, by shifting it back to $20,000, is it avoids you having to deal with it if you're under $20,000 or if you're under 200 transactions. I think that's a big deal, because I think if taxpayers feel like they're getting overwhelmed with paperwork, they just throw up their hands. I say, I can't even deal with this. And so I think there's a very important change in the law. And here's the bigger news. The bigger news is this 1099-K, this is a little teeny tiny benefit out of the one big beautiful bill. There were dozens of incentives that not just save you time and hassle with the IRS, but could save you thousands and thousands of dollars in taxes. That's exactly what I break down on my free webinar. How to use these updated rules to reduce your tax bill and build real wealth, starting right now. Click the link below. save your spot. And if you refer friends to sign up to the webinar, you get the chance to win a one-on-one with me and a chance for several other prizes as well. But be quick, because we don't have very many seats left. So the IRS delayed the rule until it's not even required anymore under One Big Beautiful Bill. When did the One Big Beautiful Bill stop it? As of this year. So beginning in 2025, this reporting is not required. So you're good. You're good on this $20,000. You don't have to do anything to prepare for this, except if you do a lot of, transfers on, something like Venmo or Zelle, things like that, then you probably want to use multiple apps, frankly. And it's not for the income. If it's income, if it's your business, go ahead and use it. I would be careful. I would use one of these transfer mechanisms for business and others for personal, because what you don't want is again, to have this problem, because now all of a sudden you got $20,000. I mean, hopefully you're making more than $20,000 in your business, right? So you could get $20,000 of receipts from your eBay business. You could be $150,000 in your eBay business. You're going to get a 1099K. There's nothing wrong with that, because that's actually your income. So no problem with that. What you don't want is you don't want grandma's birthday gift to get lumped into that. That's what you're going to do. You do need to do a little planning there. So first thing I would do, I would not use the same app for business and personal. I would separate them out. By the way, here's a little secret for you. I do the same thing with credit cards. I do not use business credit cards ever for personal. That's a no-no. But I also try not to use personal credit cards for business. I use business credit cards for business, personal credit cards for personal. The same thing should be true on a cash transfer app. Now, is this rule dropped for good? I would say yes. I think there was so many problems with it, which is why the IRS delayed it so long. I don't think it's coming back. I think even if the Democrats win the House and the Senate and that White House in a few years, I don't think they'll bring it back. I think it was a bad idea in the first place. It's unworkable. So I think you're pretty safe for now. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Now, if you do get a 1099K because you've got business, and let's say that you get this 1099K and you've mixed it with personal, you're going to have to speak with your tax preparer. Here's what I would do. I'd work with your tax preparer on this. But you probably have income from other sources. By the way, kind of the general rule is if your income on your business, on your tax return, is greater than the 1099s you get, the IRS is never going to challenge it.